now let's begin with the main purpose of the event and welcome Lubomila Jordanova, who has just recently pitched her project Plan A before investors at the We Work Creators Award and became one of the 3 applicants to be going to the finals in New York. Lubomila is the founder and CEO of Plan A, which is the first data-driven action platform which is fighting against the climate change. Prior to Plan A, Lubomila worked in the investment banking, venture capital, and fintech in Asia and Europe, and she holds a master in management degree from the London School of Economics and Political Science. So thank you, Lubomila, for joining us today and sharing your experience and expertise with us. And one more thing before you start, as you said, on the right side of the screen, you can see the Q&A section, the chat section, where you can post your questions, and we will then answer in the Q&A session.
Lovely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share my experience and answer all the questions. I know that pitching is something that doesn't come naturally. It has taken me a lot of practice to feel comfortable and confident to do this in front of big crowds, and I'll be happy to answer any kind of questions that come along the way. Please feel free to send messages throughout the presentation, and I'll make sure I answer all of them by the end of it. So what is the agenda for today? Today we're going to speak about what is actually pitching. There's a few definitions, and I think it's important to clarify this from the beginning. The second aspect is the structure of a pitch. So what is well-structured and well-organized pitch so that you convey your message well. Then the do's, then the don'ts of a pitch. An important aspect which quite often gets overlooked is how does a pitch deck look and how do you make sure that it is visibly pleasing so that people pay attention to you as well as to what's happening on the screen, and resources. So something like a little encyclopedia so that all of you can have after this talk a place to go and look for further information. Sorry for the alarm. Berlin is a bit of a busy place. What is a pitch? Well, a pitch deck is usually something between 10 and 20 slides. It's a presentation that can have a few purposes, and it is really important to kind of, have a clear idea of what is the purpose of the presentation you're preparing. Pitches vary in length depending on how much time you have, who's the audience, and what is the message you would like to convey. One of the key things that has been a key issue for me when I've been preparing pitches is to always make sure I know the answers of a few questions. So first of all, who am I presenting to? What does this mean? Sometimes you're presenting to investors. Sometimes you're presenting to potential partners. These are different messages you're trying to send, which means that each presentation would need to be prepared separately. You can't use a template. You can't rely on the fact that one pitch deck looks good and is well structured. Each time you have to be kind of, tailoring your message to who you're talking to. Do you know enough about them? Thanks to the lovely internet, there's a lot of opportunities for us to find a lot of information about people, about companies, about venture capital funds. It is really important before you pitch to whoever you're pitching to understand their background, to see if it's investors who they've invested in before, if it's a potential partner, who have they partnered before with, so that you can kind of, position yourself when you're trying to sell your idea, your company, your services, in a way that this company would find a potential partnership or investment favorable. What do I want from them? This is a question you don't need to do a lot of research for. You should be clear from the very beginning. What do you want from this presentation? So what kind of end action do you expect for the other party to take? Is it that you want them to invest in you? Is it that you want to have a partnership? you have to be clear because this is how you structure the message that you're trying to send. What is the message that I'm trying to convey? If it's that you want money, this doesn't mean that you simply say, I want someone to invest in me. The message that you want to convey is that you are a company that deserves to be funded, which means I have a good idea, I have a good team, and my proposition to you is something you should consider. How much time do I have? This is incredibly important, and this is one of the easy tricks, easy mistakes that one does when presenting. People like to hear themselves talking, and even if they're shy, they kind of, if they get in the flow, they end up talking a lot more than what they actually have been starting off with in terms of planning, which is really problematic because you might end up speaking for, over time. And if, normally competitions or normally investors that you have a meeting with would always limit the time which they allow you to kind of, to pay attention to you. And if it's a competition, it normally would be like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you'll be cut off by the second. So it's important to know how much time you have and to practice so that you're always on time. What is the setup of the pitch? So as Yana mentioned, for example, the next presentation that you will be doing, or maybe, the next one that I know of, is going to be online. This means that, you have to prepare for the light to be good, for you to kind of, be in a place which is not noisy. This is, for example, when it's online. When it's offline, you also have to pay attention to things such as, how do you look? Are you wearing something that is inappropriate? Are you so kind of thinking of the audience, of the setup, and of these externalities that would be leading to a different evaluation for you. So always thinking of who's watching and who you're presenting to. So to finish off this slide, it is incredibly important to always have a clear answer to these questions in order to do well. Before you even start preparing a slide deck, this is the way to understand what should be the structure of the deck or what is the message you're trying to say, but always have a clear answer to these questions. Otherwise, you're likely to, fail at least on in one way or another. So going to the next slide. Oops, sorry. So what is the structure of a pitch? This is one of those things that people often end up experimenting. I've seen a lot of presentations, and it is really surprising to me that people challenge this structure because this is a fairly straightforward explanation of how your business works. It is a straightforward structure that is not going to confuse anyone in their mind, especially if you keep it simple and straightforward. Sometimes some of these building blocks go out because your business is not mature enough. That is okay. But it is really important that majority of these aspects always stay in your presentation so that there's a clear structure and there's a clear understanding on the other side what message you're trying to send. So let's start from the beginning. Title, backstory. In the same way that a book starts with a cover, with a title and the author on it, the same thing you need for your pitch deck. You need to say who you are, what is the name of your company, what is your logo, and the date, the location maybe. This is not a must, but it's a good thing to have. This is kind of setting the scene and getting people prepared, and it's also, if you're nervous, it's a really easy way to kind of get yourself a bit calm because you end up speaking about something that you surely remember well. What is your company? What's your name? The second thing, a clarification that I would like to make. This is the structure of a pitch, which is allowing you more than 3 minutes. This is something that is like 5 to 10 minute presentation, and it's also quite rushed. But these are the must-have elements if you're preparing a pitch for investors, or if you're preparing. So, this is obviously a more lengthy thing. But if you have like a 1 minute pitch, the story is different, and I'm happy to speak about this at the end, telling you about my experiences with 1 minute and 3 minute pitches. But this one is the must-haves of a normal length, kind of, well presented business idea pitch. So back to aspect number 2, problem and opportunity. So in order for anyone to be able to understand what is, why does your business matter, why does your startup should exist, you have to explain what is the problem and what is the opportunity, which means like if you're building a company which is trying to, plant trees I'm going to use obviously an environmental example because this is what my company is fighting, but if your company is planting trees in deforested and, deserted areas, the problem that you're solving is deforestation or and indirectly and actually directly, let's say, climate change. The problem that you need to explain is essentially saying what is the pain that you are addressing that people have. If we take the example of Uber, let's say, what Uber has done, even though a bit more controversial company these days, still, I think a good example because it's quite straightforward. The problem is essentially that taxis have been expensive historically and anywhere across the world. And, there's been a lot of cars sitting around the city that could have been used to transport people from one place to another. This is the problem that they were solving. And the solution, which is the next slide, is a straightforward explanation of what is your proposition, what is your company's offer that addresses these problems directly. And please, if you have questions, I'm still going to say it. If you have questions about anything, you need further clarifications, just post a message on the Q&A. What is the next step? Business model. What does this mean? This is how do you make money? Doesn't matter if you that many types of business models that you can charge a percentage as part of a transaction. You can have a freemium model, for example. Spotify is a good example of a freemium model where the company gives you services for free, but in order for you to stop listening to ads, you need to pay. This is a freemium model. There are thousands of types of business models, a few more popular than others, but this is the moment when you explain to the audience how do you make money. The next slide is incredibly important and also one that is particularly complicated to be able to do well. And there's also a lot of disputes amongst investors on what is the best approach to do it. What does market size mean? It means that, if you're building a solution that is particularly adjusted to a very tiny geography, and it focuses on a very particular problem that a neighborhood has, your market size is, and if this solution also is not applicable to any other geography, this means your market size is that big. It's a market size that focuses on very small regions, so probably your business is not going to be able to expand further a lot, which means that this is not a good investment opportunity. A market size can be calculated in many ways, and this is something that I haven't included in the resources, but I'm happy when you send me follow-up emails to ask for the presentation or ask Yana. I'll send also a link for how you calculate market size. There's a top-down and bottom-up approach on how to calculate this. I can go into depth of explaining this. The quick explanation is essentially the top-down is the one that investors don't like because this is a bit more kind of, it is a bit more, so to say, poetic way of understanding how big is your market because it could sound quite ambitious, but it also doesn't always rely on reality. Because you can say, there's a huge market for people wanting to write letters to one another. And you say letters have been existing for the whole history of humanity. I think, my market is the whole planet. This does not exist. This is kind of an approach which is never good to have because this is not realistic. And in any case, you and your small business, is never going to be able to kind of give services to the whole planet. So your market size is always something you need to calculate well, and it kind of is something that you have to have a plan on how to approach. But this is literally like a topic that it can be a kind of a separate webinar. So I'm gonna leave this, and I'm happy to kind of answer in the Q&A session any questions that you have specifically for this with regards to your own businesses, so that we make it a bit more example specific. Next slide, number 6, competition. So this is an important slide to have, because it basically shows that you understand reality and you've done your market research. What does this mean? The competition is people that provide services similar or the same as you. If, let's say, you are a flower delivery company in a particular geography, your competition is not only the companies that provide online flower delivery, but it's also the flower shops that deliver. It's also like, maybe bigger supermarket chains that delivers. So it's kind of, someone that maybe doesn't directly sound as a competitor, but it's someone that provides the same services in one way or another. And it's important for investors to see this, because this means that you understand what is your competition and how you're going to tackle the market, so that you have your own competitive advantage against the existing players. Next slide is the marketing plan. This is again an opportunity for investors to understand what is your plan for building your company, and how do you imagine positioning yourself on this planet, so to say. It is really important to always remember that in the beginning of your company, and this is not something to put you down, but in the beginning of the company, no one knows about you. So it is quite clear that in order for someone to learn about you, you would need to perform some sort of marketing activities. Some of them paid, some of them unpaid, but this means be it organizing an event, be it putting out ads on TV, on radio. There are thousands of different types, especially today with the online world of marketing activities. This shows that you have planned on how much money you would kind of need, or how much effort you would need in order to market yourself and make yourself visible to a bigger group of people and your potential clients. Traction. So you will find in the resources that I've left at the end something that would help you to understand what metrics make sense for you. What does traction mean? Traction means that you are building, you have found a measurable way to understand why your business is becoming more and more successful, why are there more clients that you have, and essentially, it shows some numbers behind your efforts. So attraction for a platform like Booking.com is the number of bookings that have happened over a certain amount of period, let's say a month. Another thing that could be a way of showing traction is the amount of revenue that you've gotten. So again, how much have you achieved for an X amount of time? This is really important, and this, especially for more mature companies, which are not simply an idea, is one of the most important things on which you get to be judged by investors. So now we're coming to probably the most important slide out of all of them. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have not only a good team slide, but also to have built a good team. Even if it's one or two people, it is incredibly important that you show within this slide, like, who's on your team, who's behind the idea, what kind of expertise do you have, what is the background that these people have, and also what is their position within the company at the moment. Why is this important? Because in the early days, a company is a group of people with an idea. But as time passes, the idea moves, the idea changes, the business model sometimes changes, and the key aspect that is going to make this idea and something that is matured into something else even successful is the people that are standing behind it. So you're going to hear all the time the cliche of, the team is the most important thing. It is, and make sure that you put it well on your deck. Product demonstration. If you're building an app, if you're building a website, it is always good to show some mock-ups and kind of present to whoever is listening how does your platform look, and what can it do, and all that kind of stuff. So this is kind of connected to the previous slide. It is your call to action. If you're sitting in front of an investor panel on an audience that has the possibility to vote for you as a potential winner of a competition, it is really important that at the end you say that, this is what we do, and what we're looking for at the moment is investment to allow us to do this and this and this. This is essentially a clear message that you finish your presentation with, and you explain to people that you are clear with what you want, and they should not be confused about why this information came to them. Or even if they've been clear already, you can still reiterate to them that you're looking for investment. With regards to the Entrepregirl competition, or with regards to any other competition that you're doing, this is maybe not necessary because Jana is going to tell later what the prices are, but it is important that you're clear on what you want to achieve with your call if you're presenting in front of a potential partner or an investment group. And finally, you have to finish with a thank you slide with your contact details, and also this is the place where you put logos of media that you've been published on, which is something that investors care about. Next slide. So the do's of a pitch. Keep it straight to the point. Don't fluff. If you are listening to a presentation in university or like at an event, you quite often see that you lose attention if someone is being boring or they continue like explaining stuff in big detail. It is important to keep it straight to the point, and don't be overly explanatory. If you're speaking about data, speak about the data and maybe add a sentence that explains it, but that's enough. Second thing, and incredibly important, your slides should tell a story. It's not about simply saying, I am a company that fights against, against plastic pollution, which is why we're building metal bottles. You have to explain what the problem is in a passionate way so that people get engaged from the first minute that they're listening to you. The next step is to have a clear structure. This is, I hope that the previous slide can help you with this, but, just think of it, and you can always experiment by giving the presentation to someone, a friend or a family member, or just like, ask someone of your colleagues in university or anywhere where you are, but like make sure you have a clear structure and ask them at the end of your test presentation, did they understand what you're trying to say, and did they follow through because there was a clear structure. This is really important. So this is also incredibly important. Prepare a list of likely questions you will be asked and know the answers. What does this mean? You can look, and I've left also in the resources a list of 30 questions that get to be asked by investors. Quite often the questions are exactly the same. You get to be asked, what do you need money for? You get to be asked, like, why do you think the problem that you're solving is so important, and all that kind of stuff. The questions repeat themselves because a startup success relies on a set of success factors that quite often are the same. So make sure you kind of prepare a likely Q&A, and you will be a lot more comfortable and confident when you get to be asked exactly these questions at a competition or in front of investors. Be realistic with your financial projections or business plans. Quite often, and you're going to notice even more as you get along the entrepreneurial journey, I can confirm to you that I've seen it in London a lot, in Berlin as well, where I'm based now. People always feel comfortable lying a bit about their company because, there's always this fluffy element about are you overselling it a bit? Make sure you don't do that. And maybe someone else is going to tell you to kind of feel okay with doing this, but for me, it's not comfortable purely for the fact that I know that, lies and also making overstatements get to be caught fairly quickly. So just, be realistic. You're going to get a lot more positive response if you're kind of honest with the way you speak. Of course, speak about successes with big words and in a proud way, but don't try to oversell your company before it has achieved a lot. Numbers speak for themselves. Show that you have a plan. No investor or partner will listen if you haven't thought of the future. What does this mean? Well, you should have something beyond an idea. Businesses, in majority of the cases, fail. 98% of startups fail. And it's not because everyone has a bad idea, but even good ideas fail because there's no execution plan behind them. So make sure you have an execution plan and you can answer questions about it and you're prepared to kind of, for the different scenarios, depending on, what reality can end up being. Rehearse. So the beauty of having a presentation, be it being part of a competition or in front of investors, is that you have a lot of time to prepare in advance. So don't waste time. That doesn't mean to write down a speech. There's people that do that. I don't do that. I don't feel comfortable with it because you end up tangling your mind with what was the word and what was I supposed to say here. Make sure you know what's on your slides and make sure you have a clear idea of what is the message you're trying to convey. Rehearse it a few times. Make sure you're on time. As I said, time passes quickly. The moment when you start presenting, the 5th minute, the 10th minute is gone within seconds. So rehearse so that you're on time and you're convincing. So the one before the last is that do it yourself. The beauty of our generation, and also something that could be a hidden a bit of a problem as well, is that there's a lot of information online about entrepreneurship and how we should be doing things, what kind of stuff we should be saying, and I wouldn't recommend following a template or copying someone else's presentation. Your startup is unique, so make sure you build a presentation based on what you're trying to say. Finally, and incredibly important, listen. By the moment when you finish with your presentation, there's going to be on the other side someone that has listened and might have understood, might have not. If you have been successful, they would have understood, but if you haven't been incredibly clear, they might ask a question for clarification. This is the moment for you to kind of, explain further, not get angry, be okay with whatever the question is, and feel comfortable with responding in a calm and straightforward manner what the story is. So now we get to the don'ts. I kind of already said this in a different way, but it's really important for me to say it again. Don't lie, don't make up numbers. Don't say things that haven't happened. Seasoned investors and corporates will catch you quickly because our startup ideas are unique, but also business models and industries are the same. So maybe your idea is unique itself, but it is part of a universe that can be relatable for a corporate and an investor. So make sure you're honest. Don't worry. Don't worry if you mess up a slide or the content. It is not about stumbling and then being super nervous and like not wanting to continue, just make sure you like take a breath and start again. It's all going to be fine. Like, these are things that happen, and, you always think when you rehearse, like, this is how I should have said it. Doesn't really matter. These people are listening to this presentation for the first time, so you shouldn't think that you've messed up just because you didn't say it in the way that you have been preparing for it. So this is incredibly important. Don't forget to introduce your team. Don't skip this slide. Don't run through, don't rush through it. Don't try to, say it very quickly. This is an important one, so make sure you clarify it and spend some time on it. Don't overlook the time frame that you have for your pitch. If you have been told 5 minutes, that means that you cannot have more than 10 slides. This is even a lot. If you have 5 minutes, make sure that you have really clear idea what you're going to say each minute, and don't over add slides, because in our effort to say a lot of information, we end up speaking quicker, people don't understand, and it's confusing. So, you're better off saying some less, but clearly, than saying too much in a really fast way when no one understands and no one is passionate at the end about your idea. If you're presenting in person, it is really important to pay attention to your body language. Some statistics say that 80% of what we actually convey as a message when we speak to people is our body language. And this can explain to you how important it is to be, one of the things, so I don't know how to show this, but one of the ways that people protect themselves is like by hiding themselves with this kind of measures. Make sure you have open hands and speak in a manner. Even if you're in front of the computer, if this is how much is visible from you, make sure that, your face is visible, that you're not too far away from the screen, but make sure that these things matter, because your face is the way, it communicates a lot more than simply the words that you're using. When it comes to the Q&A, it is really important that you don't dance around the question. If you don't answer the question, if you don't know how to answer the question, just say you check later and you come back to to whoever is asking about this, be it an investor or whatever it is. If these people care about what you're telling them, they would be okay with receiving the information a bit later. Of course, if you can prepare the Q&A in advance, the more you are prepared, the fewer questions you have that you cannot answer. Don't read from the slides. This is really important, if you're presenting in person. People need to look you in your face and to be able to see that you are part of the conversation. The pitch is a conversation. This is not you speaking to yourself. It is a monologue maybe for one moment from one period of 5 minutes, but it's actually a conversation. You're trying to convince someone that they should invest in you, or they should be part of your company, or whatever it is. Make sure that this is quite clear. Another thing is, don't give away too much too soon. What I've seen many times in pitches is that people explain immediately how much equity they're giving, how much their company's valuation is. This is when you get to the more mature stage of the discussions with the investor, but don't give away too much too soon. Don't over expect or respond in advance to questions that have been not asked, especially when it comes to financial topics. So these are the questions where you can easily say, we have been this is the moment when if someone asks how much equity are you giving, you would say please allow me to kind of, let's have further discussions after this conversation finishes or something like that. But don't go straight to the point of giving away too much. How does a pitch deck look? So historically, I've seen horrendous pitches, and this is not because all of us only some of us are good designers, but it's because people try to overdo it. Slides should be straightforward and simple, and they have to explain your content, but like, don't overdo it with the design. What does this mean? So keep it straightforward and make sure that everything is aligned. If you have a title and, you want to create another site, make sure the next title is at the same position. Like, these little things matter. People notice them. Have a title, have a subtitle. If you use bullet points, nothing more than 16 in size. Nothing less than 16 in size is easy to read. So try to and then it becomes really cramped with information. So if you're presenting in front of an audience, less than 16 is not a good idea in size. Use always the same font. And one thing that kind of shocks me a lot, and I hope this doesn't, I don't want to disappoint anyone that has been using this stock photos a lot, is stock photos showing that you're trying to visualize something that, is kind of a general topic, globe or whatever it is, but first of all, I've left in the resources a list of a website which is called Pexels, and also there's another one called Unsplash, which you can use for stock photos, which are free, but they don't look like stock photos, so they look a bit more artistic, a bit more creative, a bit more authentic. Make sure you don't use these photos of people shaking hands, or this is really old school. And there's a lot of ways in which you can visualize things. If you need to use icons, use Noun Project. I'm going to write it down here. 1 second, and I'm going to send it to Yana as well, so she can send it to you. Noun Project is a really great resource with free icons. And another aspect is if you're using statistics. So one thing that I forgot to mention, and it's incredibly important, is that when you explain the problem, always try to size it. What does this mean? If you're speaking about I'm producing metal bottles because there's a huge problem with plastic pollution, don't simply state that there's a problem with plastic pollution. Say how big is the problem. Find statistics. They're out there. You can find them easily. And always, you can see here, as I've written here at the bottom, always put the references, because this is kind of a scientific approach to it maybe, but it's really important because this shows that you've done your research. You also respect whoever has created this, information. And that's kind of it. And now we're getting to the resources. So if you need inspiration for some presentations, SlideShare, which got acquired by LinkedIn a while back, is a place where people upload their presentations. They're not only pitch decks, they're educational presentations. There's a lot of different types of presentations, but they're quite, they're a lot, and they're also quite interesting. So if you need some ideas about how things are phrased, how do things look, how much information is on each slide, go there. TED, of course, you know what's TED. I'm sure you've seen some, videos from TED, from the platform. But one thing that TED is great about is telling a story. And regardless of the fact that some presenters speak about things that could, be seemingly not that interesting or boring, the speakers always tell a story. And even if they use slides, obviously these slides are not for investors, they always tell a story. So this is a good thing for inspiration, or if you want to see good body language practices. But this is a good place to start if you need some inspiration. Pexels. So as I said, please don't use stock photos. If you want to use stock photos, use these. They're great, and they're beautiful, and also the authors have kind of openly gave them to whoever needs them. This is maybe a bit of a weird one. It's a platform for colors, but it is quite nice. If you're not sure, I'm not a designer. I have a designer on my team, and she kind of chases me for anything that needs to look in a particular way. But many of us are not designers, and you're not supposed to be, all of it. I know that you're doing as entrepreneurs a lot in the accounting, the designing, the presenting. But if you need some ideas on what is good color coding, this is a good place to go. This is a link with questions that investors are likely to ask you. Just check it out. It's again for inspiration. Also think of industry specific or your startup specific questions about your geography, about the market that you're serving, about your background and how does this fit you being the most appropriate person solving this problem. All these questions are likely to come up. Make sure you have them. Startup metrics, I already explained this. Check these out. This is from one of the biggest VCs on this planet, Anderson Horowitz. I love them. They're super good guys. Incredible investments they've made, and they have a lot of incredible resources on their blog. So follow them, subscribe to their newsletter. Meetup.com is a place where you can find events where you can meet entrepreneurs, where you can find events where you can practice your pitch or listen to other pitching. I think Meetup.com is an incredible tool for you to find people, and I would definitely recommend it to kind of have an offline exposure to like-minded people. TechCrunch.com, I'm sure many of you are familiarized with this platform, is the best tech news website, and it's the biggest authority when it comes to publishing the latest news about startups. If you're looking for data on startups, if you're looking for like the coolest things happening at the moment, just go check it out. They also have a newsletter, but see what's going on there. And finally, Quora. Quora is a platform that is not directly related to entrepreneurship, but is the biggest question and answer platform. You can ask any question you have and you can get any answer. It's really good because there's a lot of thought leaders there. You can get really important people to answer your questions. And also, you can get actual people with actual experience from a particular problem, a market. If you don't know how to, size your market, if you're having issues with understanding your geography, whatever it is, this is the place where you can ask questions. And finally, about me, and I'm only telling you this because I would be happy to kind of answer now all the questions that you have, but for you to understand better what kind of questions I can answer. I am originally from Bulgaria. I've lived for the last 12 years in London. For the last 1 year and a half, I'm in Berlin, where I'm building my startup, which is a action platform in the fight against climate change. We're using data to predict where and how climate change will hit the hardest, and based on this, we channel funds to environmental organizations across the planet. What makes me appropriate for this talk and why I was invited to speak today is because, especially over the last month, I have been pitching on a weekly basis because we were part of a competition that WeWork, which is the biggest co-working space in the world, organized across the globe, and we were the winners in Berlin for Western Europe. And I pitched in a few different formats. So there was a 1-minute pitch in front of a big 5,000 people audience. There was a 5-minute pitch in front of investors, which happened before I spoke in front of this audience. And there was another format, which was a 3-minute pitch. So I've covered kind of a lot, and obviously I've fundraised for my startup and also had to get a lot of partners, and also planning has organized a lot of events. So I have had a lot of exposure to presenting to people. So with this in mind, and my background is in investment banking, venture capital, and fintech, so predominantly finance and business-related topics. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and also I'm going to send Yana my presentation so she can kind of, forward it to all of you that need it. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at the moment and go back to some slides if you need further clarification.
Thank you, Lucy. There is one question right now, but you already answered it. It is where are the resources available? So you will receive them via the email, which will follow up our Q&A now. And If you have any other questions, feel free to share them. You can either do it in the Q&A section or in the chat. Both are available to us, so we can see them. In the meantime, I would like to thank you. It was really inspiring. If I were to pitch right now, I would definitely try and follow all those steps. It was for me. I highly appreciate it, and it was really valuable.
Thank you. I'm always happy to help, and yeah, my journey has been, not the easiest one, because obviously in the beginning I didn't know a lot of these things, and I found books, resources, and I'm always happy to share anything that I know. And if you're a bit shy to ask questions now, I also have left my email here, so that in case you want to send me an email, of course I encourage you to follow Plan A Earth, so that you learn more about climate change and how technology is able to address it. But yeah, this is kind of, I'm really happy for the invitation, and I'm honored to be able to share with ladies, girls that also interested in getting into the, or already are in the entrepreneurship field. So well done, girls. This is a great start, and I have my fingers crossed for all of you. I'm quite excited to see the final pitches. I'm going to be watching them online. So feel free to send me an email, and if you need any further information, just send me an email, or and follow Plan A.
Okay, we have some questions now. Would you recommend a book that could help us be as good as you are? The presentation was amazing, and it gave me another perspective. This was asked by Gabriela Grigorova. Thank you, Gabriela.
Oh, thank you so much. So book. I am going to suggest a few books, and so let me see if I can share my. Actually, do you know what I will do? So one thing that I did when I was preparing for the first moment to pitch Plan A to people was to prepare a kind of a library of startup books, which are in Google Drive. And if you want, Jan, I can share this with you so people can have access. It's kind of a really good book to test if your idea is viable. It's called Mom's Test, the Mom's Test. And another one, but but I would suggest that, so the Mom's Test is really great. There's another one from Ben Horowitz, which is This Investor, but I would suggest that it would be important to specify now what kind of book do you want. Like, is it a book that can teach you about business acumen? Is it a book that can help you with like understanding the finances behind startups, or how to pitch? Like, what kind of topic? I'll share this, huge library. You can navigate yourself there, but if you give me a bit more specific idea what kind of book you're looking for, I'm gonna be able to answer even better.
From what I understand from the question, she's inspired from your pitching skills and presence.
Thank you so much. The thing with pitching is being able to, I think practice makes perfect. This is a lot of, it's been a long journey of pitching for me, and I have learned how to be calm and how not to worry that the audience is going to judge, because normally the audience is quite curious to see what you're going to be able to say. So what I would say is make sure you are quite, you take any opportunity that is given to you to pitch. No book can tell you how to do this.
Thank you. We have two more questions. Really interesting. Thank you, Desi, for this one. What do you consider to be the most important message to send through a 1-minute pitch?
Thank you, Desi. The most important thing within a 1-minute pitch is you explaining your passion about the project. So why are you doing this? Why is this the fight of your life? And also obviously explaining what is the fight of your life. So 1 minute pitches are quite challenging. I must say that when I had to present in front of the WeWork audience, which was a few thousand people, it was really challenging because, this is the kind of pitch that you cannot not practice and also not have a specific set of words that you're going to say. This is not the moment when you do experiments. So this has been the pitch when within the 1 minute I said, why is climate change the biggest crisis humanity has ever faced, and why Plan A is going to be able to solve this. And this is, by the time when you say this, the time is finished. So your passion and what is the problem that, how are you solving this problem that you see is so big and is dedicated your whole time to?
Thank you. We have two more questions. Maria Radu is asking, since we only have 1 week to the pitch, what should we focus on the most, the demo or the business side of the pitch?
So it would always be nice to be able to say, and it really depends on at what stage is your business. But I'm assuming the stage, it's fairly early. So I would think that the most important thing to focus on is the business side of your pitch and showing you understand what you're doing. The demo should be included, but don't if you have how long is Yana? How long is the presentation? How long?
5 minutes is the speaking.
Okay. Actually, this Sunday when I was in New York, I had a 5-minute presentation, and I also did a demo. I dedicated 1 minute to the demo, and it was not enough when I kind of was preparing, so I dedicated 1.5 minutes. But you have to be super clear with what is the business case, how are you best positioned to solve whatever problem you're solving, and then, do a demo, definitely show what is your technical solution, but don't spend more than 1 minute, 1.5 minutes on this, because you're going to end up feeling overwhelmed by all the business things that you haven't missed or skipped.
Thank you. And one last question we have from Laura Karamanoleva. She asks, how can we best evaluate what amount of finances the business will need? I am not in finances, and it is kind of hard to have more long-term planning.
So this is another resources that I'll be happy to provide. There's some template budgets that you can make for yourself. What you would need at a later stage is a financial model. This is a business model which allows you to calculate, in the simplest way explained, is the business making more money than it's spending? And this is when you show that you are on the right path. For the beginning, when you're trying to kind of, tell an investor how much money you need, what I would suggest, there's a few things you need to take into account. One is what kind of costs you're going to have. So who are you going to hire and how much are they going to cost? What are the salaries? Are you going to need an office space? So, and also, are you going to need some marketing, which is always good to have in mind. And there's certain hidden costs that we always forget, which are maybe you use Slack and then you pay for a membership there. Or all these things that are licenses and all that kind of stuff, lawyers. In the beginning, you have to pay for lawyers, even if it's one single person, just to register the company. You need a lawyer, you need a tax an accountant or a tax advisor. Calculate what kind of costs your business needs at bare minimum to start off, and then make a plan for what kind of people you think you need to join you in order for you to be able to achieve your big vision, which is maybe building a company that covers the whole world with regards to providing SaaS solution for accounting. Let's say this exists a lot, so maybe don't start doing this, but this is kind of a possibility. So make sure you have a clear idea for the beginning, what you're going to need to be able to start off, which is how do you register the business? How do you kind of, what kind of legal advice you would need to be able to structure the company? And also, like, one step after that, what kind of people you would need? Do you need office space? Do you need, like, some sort of, if it's a physical product, do you need, like, production? Do you have production costs? Depending on what you're trying to do, make sure that you have clarity on all these things and make a projection at least for 2 years. Even though it's clear that it's going to change, I'm not doubting this, but yeah, make sure you have this. I'm going to send Tiana an example budget, which you can start off with.
All of those resources will be sent to you, and you will have access to the presentations and the links provided in somewhere aforementioned. And so if you don't have any questions, I know that Lubomila is in a hurry and she's late for another meeting that she has right now. So I suppose that we can let you go and we can proceed. If there are any questions arising on an upper stage, I will send them to Lubomila, and she will be able to ask you to answer you in person and further on develop the discussion.
Thank you very much for hosting me, and I'm happy to, please feel free to contact me. And yeah, good luck next week. I'll be watching the pitches, and I wish you all the best. Like, don't give up. It's not an easy journey, but it's worth doing it because you learn a lot and you kind of become I would say, like a more knowledgeable and more fighter kind of person just by going through the hurdles of building a business. And it's not only negative, it's amazing. It's an amazing journey. So good luck to all of you, and thank you for having me.